There is a particular kind of dread that belongs to the sea, not the dread of storms, not the dread of rocks in the dark. Those are fears with names, with shapes, with things you can do about them. I mean, the dread of the ocean's indifference, the understanding that the water does not know you are there, that it would look exactly the same if you were gone. December 5th, 1872. The Atlantic Ocean, 400 miles east of the Azores. The crew of the British brigantine Dei Gratia spotted something in the distance. A ship running before the wind, full sail, making way, moving with purpose toward Genoa as if she knew exactly where she was going. Her name was the Mary Celeste. Captain David Morehouse recognized her immediately. He had dined with her captain, Benjamin Briggs, an old friend, just 10 days before they both left New York. He knew this ship. He knew the man who sailed her. But something was wrong. The Mary Celeste was yawing, moving erratically. Her sails were set, but not quite right. Some damaged, some not drawing the wind they should. She was sailing, but she was sailing the way a person walks when no one is watching the path. Morehouse had his men row across. They boarded her. The deck was empty. They went below. The galley, a meal half prepared, a pot still on the stove. Coffee, by some accounts, still warm. The captain's table set for dinner. A child's toys on the floor. In the captain's cabin, his wife's sewing box, open, needle threaded, work abandoned mid-stitch. The crew's quarters, hammocks still swung, personal belongings untouched. No signs of struggle, no blood, no damage. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, nothing missing, except the lifeboat and the 10 people who had been alive on this ship 9 days ago. I am Inspector Morrow, and the Mary Celeste is the case that has no solution. Only the shape of one, just out of reach, like something seen through fog that disappears when you sail toward it. Before a mystery, there are people. It is easy to forget that. The Mary Celeste becomes the ghost ship, the legend, the unsolved case, and the 10 people aboard become abstractions. Clues in a puzzle, pieces of a story. But they were not abstractions on November 7th, 1872, when she left New York Harbor. Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs was 37 years old, a deeply religious man. He did not allow alcohol aboard his ships, which is a fact that will become significant later. He was experienced, respected, and careful. He had commanded several vessels before the Mary Celeste and had never lost one. He had brought his wife, Sarah Elizabeth Briggs, on this voyage. They had done this before. She loved the sea, and he loved her company. Their elder child, Arthur, was left at home with his grandmother. He was 7 years old. His parents judged the voyage too long for him. They brought their younger child. Sophia Matilda Briggs was 2 years old. The crew of 7 were a mixed company. Albert Richardson, the first mate, was also experienced and trusted. Briggs had sailed with him before. The others were German, Italian, American, ordinary men, working men, men who had made this crossing before or ones like it. The Mary Celeste carried cargo, 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol bound for Genoa. Not drinking alcohol, crude industrial spirit used for fortifying wine, highly flammable, stored in the hold. She left New York on November 7th. The weather was bad from the start, storms in the Atlantic, heavy seas. But she was a sound ship, and Briggs was a sound captain, and they made way. The last entry in the captain's log was November 25th, 1872. It recorded their position as 5 miles north of Santa Maria, the southernmost of the Azores Islands. Sea state, moderate. Wind, northwest. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. After that, silence. The log continues, but in a different hand. A navigation log, kept separately, shows entries up to and including November 25th. The final recorded position places the Mary Celeste about 6 miles. When the Dei Gratia found her, 10 days later, she she was 400 miles further east. She had been sailing, alone, unguided, in roughly the right direction, for 10 days. The ocean had been taking her to Genoa, as if it remembered where she was supposed to go. Oliver Devoe, the Dei Gratia's first mate, led the boarding party. He later gave testimony at the salvage hearing in Gibraltar. His account is precise, careful, and deeply strange. The ship's compass had been damaged. The binnacle, the housing for the compass, was knocked over. The ship's 2 pumps, one was broken and disassembled, apparently being repaired when the ship was abandoned. The other was functional, 3.5 feet of water in the hold. Not alarming for a ship in Atlantic weather, a well-found vessel could carry much more, but enough to suggest that whoever left had reason to think she might be taking on water. The main hatch was open. The fore and lazarette hatches were closed and secure. The rigging was partly damaged but functional. The sails, some set, some furled wrongly, some torn, as if set in haste, or set by someone who didn't finish. In the captain's cabin, his logbook, his charts, his navigational instruments, some missing, some present. His wife's harmonium, a small keyboard instrument. Sheet music open on the stand, as if she had just stepped away from playing. Her jewellery box, intact, all her jewellery inside, untouched. A bottle of medicine, opened, a file of oil for a sewing machine. The sewing machine itself, with a garment partially completed in it. The child's toys on the floor, a rag doll. In the galley, food, substantial provisions for 6 months, fresh water, everything a crew would need to survive for a very long time. One detail that would later become mythologized, and which is almost certainly false. The story of the meal still hot on the table, the cups of tea still warm, the food half eaten. This became part of the legend. Devoe's actual testimony does not support it. The galley showed signs of recent meal preparation, but nothing hot, nothing freshly served. The legend grew because it was better than the truth. The truth was stranger. The ship was simply empty, orderly, provisioned, ready to sail. The lifeboat was gone. It had been launched. There was evidence of a towline along the stern rail. The line had been severed or had parted under strain. Whatever took the crew off the Mary Celeste, they left in the lifeboat. They took the navigational instruments, the sextant, the chronometer. They took nothing else. They left behind everything they owned, everything they would need to survive. They left in a hurry, or they left intending to come back. 9 of the 1,701 barrels of alcohol were empty, not broken, empty. The red oak barrels, more porous than the white oak ones, had leaked, or had been opened and emptied. The hold, when the Dei Gratia's crew entered it, did not smell of alcohol fumes. The hatch was open, and whatever had been there had dispersed. The salvage hearing in Gibraltar began in January 1873. The Queen's advocate, a man named Solly Flood, conducted it. Flood was convinced of foul play from the beginning. He believed, with no evidence and against the testimony of everyone who had boarded the ship, that the Dei Gratia's crew had somehow killed or disabled the Mary Celeste's crew, then staged the discovery to claim salvage. His theory had several problems. The Dei Gratia had only 8 men and had been seen leaving New York 3 days after the Mary Celeste by a different route. The salvage claim, if that had been the plan, was absurdly modest. And the idea that Morehouse would murder his old friend Briggs, his friend's wife, and a 2-year-old child for a share of a cargo worth less than $10,000. Flood could never quite make that calculation work. But he tried. He sent a diver to examine the Mary Celeste's hull for signs of explosion or damage. He found marks on the bow. Flood insisted they were saber cuts, evidence of a boarding attack. A naval expert who examined them said they were the natural wear of a wooden hull in winter Atlantic weather. He found what he described as blood on the captain's sword, found in a cabin. The substance was later tested and found to be rust, or iron staining. depending on who you ask. He found a brown stain on the deck that he believed was blood. No subsequent analysis confirmed it. After months of hearings, Flood had nothing. The court awarded the Dei Gratia's crew a salvage payment, but a deliberately low one, reflecting the court's lingering suspicion, which it could not prove and would not abandon. No charges were filed, no theory was confirmed. The Mary Celeste was repaired and returned to service. She sailed for 13 more years, under 12 different captains. Every one of them reported something wrong. Strange mishaps, unexplained accidents, a series of financial losses so consistent that insurers became reluctant to cover her cargo. She became known as an unlucky ship, a cursed ship. In January 1885, her final captain deliberately ran her onto a reef off Haiti to commit insurance fraud. He was caught. The Mary Celeste broke apart on the reef and sank. The 10 people who left her in a lifeboat in November 1872 were never found. No wreckage of the lifeboat was recovered, no bodies, no survivors, no message in a bottle, no account from anyone who claimed to have seen them. They entered the Atlantic Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean kept them. In the century and a half since, approximately every generation has produced a new theory. Some of them are serious, some are not. One involves sea monsters. One involves a giant squid. Arthur Conan Doyle, who had, as we established in an earlier case, a complicated relationship with the boundaries of fact and fiction, wrote a short story in 1884 claiming the Mary Celeste was a fictional ship called the Mary Celeste, and invented an entirely false solution involving a group of vengeful Africans. The story was so widely read that for decades, people believed his invented details were real. The misspelling of the ship's name, Marie instead of Mary, persists to this day because of him. Let's set aside the fictions, and we look at what the evidence actually supports, which is less than you would hope and stranger than you might expect. The theory that most serious researchers consider most likely is also the least dramatic, which is often the way. 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, 9 of them empty, the red oak ones, more porous than white oak, prone to leaking. The question is not whether they leaked. The question is what happened when they did. Industrial alcohol vaporizes at low temperatures. In the hold of a wooden ship in November Atlantic weather, with the hatches closed against the cold and the sea, the fumes from 9 leaking barrels would accumulate. They would not necessarily smell strongly. Denatured alcohol has a less obvious scent than drinking spirits. But they would be there, building, invisible, flammable. At some point, a wave, a shifting cargo, something. There may have been a pressure release, not an explosion. A rapid, forceful expulsion of vapor through the hatch. A bang. Perhaps a flame that appeared and disappeared instantly, leaving no scorch marks, no sustained fire. Captain Briggs had never carried this kind of cargo before. He did not know what these barrels smelled like when they leaked, or whether a bang and a flash from the hold meant an explosion was coming or had already passed. He made a decision. He ordered everyone into the lifeboat. He attached a towline to the stern rail. They would trail behind the ship, far enough to be safe from an explosion, close enough to reboard when it was clear. Then something happened to the line. A squall, a change in wind. The line parted under strain. The Mary Celeste, under full sail, pulled away from them faster than they could row, and they watched her go. This theory explains almost everything. The haste of the departure, the untouched provisions, the navigational instruments taken because Briggs expected to come back or expected to need to navigate if something went wrong. The open main hatch. He may have opened it himself to let the fumes disperse before reboarding. It does not explain why no trace of the lifeboat or its occupants was ever found. The Azores are heavily trafficked waters. A lifeboat with 10 people, one of them a 2-year-old child, should have been visible, should have been found. The second theory is mutiny. 8 crew members turn on Briggs and Richardson, kill them, kill Sarah and Sophia, and then, consumed by what they have done, or panicking, abandon the ship themselves, and are never seen again. This theory has no evidence, no blood, no weapons, no body. And it requires us to believe that 8 ordinary working men collectively decided to commit 4 murders, including the murder of a small child, and then vanished so completely that not one of them ever told anyone, not one was ever seen again, not one left a single trace. The ocean is large, but that is a very large silence to maintain. The third theory is seaquake. A submarine earthquake, relatively common in the Azores region, could have sent shockwaves through the hull. It would have felt to the crew as if the ship was breaking apart. It would have left no visible damage. It could have caused the water in the hold. It could have caused Briggs to order abandonment. What it does not explain is the 9 empty barrels, or why, if they abandoned in panic, they took the navigational instruments. Panic and preparation rarely coexist. I have read every account of this case, every salvage testimony, every newspaper report, every theory from 1873 to the present, and there are things that none of the theories adequately explain. The first, the navigation. The last log entry places the Mary Celeste 6 miles north of Santa Maria in the Azores. She was found 400 miles east of the Azores 10 days later. She had been sailing, unguided, for 10 days, in roughly the right direction, making reasonable speed. The winds in that part of the Atlantic, in November and December, blow predominantly from the west. A ship under sail, with her wheel unattended, would naturally drift in a broadly eastward direction. She was heading to Genoa. The winds were taking her to Genoa. This is not miraculous, it is geography. But it is strange, and the strangeness is not diminished by the explanation. The second, the meal. I said earlier that the story of hot food and warm coffee is a myth, added by journalists and storytellers. That is true. But what Devo actually found is in some ways stranger. The galley showed signs of recent preparation, food in various stages of cooking, a fire that had been burning. Not a meal interrupted mid-bite, but a meal abandoned mid-preparation. Someone had been cooking. They stopped. They did not come back. The third, the sewing. Sarah Briggs's sewing machine with a garment still in it, a needle threaded, mid-stitch, her sewing box open. Sarah Briggs was the wife of a careful, disciplined sea captain. She was not a woman who would leave her work in disorder for no reason. She put down what she was doing, mid-stitch, and did not return to pick it up. Whatever happened quickly enough that she did not have time to put the needle down properly. The fourth, the child. Sophia Matilda Briggs was 2 years old, in the lifeboat, in November Atlantic weather, in whatever happened next. No account, no theory, no piece of evidence has ever indicated what became of Sophia. She is the part of this case I return to most often, not because she changes the mystery, but because she makes it human in a way that a ship full of absent sailors does not. A 2-year-old child on a lifeboat in the North Atlantic in November. The weather records for that area that week show a significant storm on November 27th and 28th, 2 days after the last log entry. A storm severe enough to damage the rigging of other ships in the area. A lifeboat would not have survived it. That may be the answer. Not a mystery, not a monster. A storm and a lifeboat, and 10 people who had no chance once the towline parted and the weather turned. But if that is what happened, if they drowned within 2 days of abandoning ship in a known area in a trafficked sea lane, why was no wreckage ever found? No bodies, no lifeboat, no fragment, nothing at all? The Atlantic is large, but bodies wash ashore, wreckage drifts. The Azores are islands. Something should have been found, nothing was. I want to end not with the theories, but with the image. A ship under full sail, moving through the North Atlantic. November and December, 1872. The ocean enormous and grey, the sky enormous and grey. And on the ship, no one. the wheel turning in the wind, the compass swinging damaged, no longer reliable. The sails doing what sails do, catching the wind, driving the hull forward. The food in the galley slowly spoiling, the coffee growing cold and then evaporating. The child's toys sliding back and forth on the cabin floor with each roll of the hull. The sewing machine, needle-threaded, going nowhere. And the ship sailing east, toward Genoa, toward where she had been told to go. There is something in this image that I find more unsettling than any theory. More unsettling than murder or mutiny or the sea monster that various newspapers suggested. It is the loyalty of the ship. The Mary Celeste had been abandoned by everyone who sailed her. Her captain, her crew, the wife and daughter of her captain, all gone. And she continued. She did not founder. She did not turn broadside to the waves. She did not sink. She sailed. As if she believed they were coming back. As if she was keeping their place for them. In 1885, her last captain wrecked her deliberately on a reef in Haiti. She broke apart and sank. The captain was prosecuted for insurance fraud. The case against him collapsed. One of his co-conspirators died before the trial, and without their testimony, the conviction could not be secured. What I can tell you about the Mary Celeste is this. Benjamin Briggs was a careful man. He did not take unnecessary risks. He did not panic without cause. He loved his wife. He had brought his 2-year-old daughter on this voyage because he thought it would be a pleasant crossing, not because he was reckless. Whatever caused him to order the abandonment of a sound ship in the middle of the Atlantic, whatever he saw or heard or smelled or felt through the hull, it was enough to make a careful, experienced, loving father put his 2-year-old child into a lifeboat on a November sea. That is the center of this case. Not the ghost ship, not the empty cabin, not the legend. The decision, made in seconds or in minutes. The decision of a man who believed absolutely that the ship behind him was more dangerous than the ocean ahead. He was wrong. Or he was right, but something else went wrong. Or something happened that no theory has yet accounted for. We will never know which. The Atlantic kept them. All 10 of them, the captain, his wife, the child, the crew, kept them as completely as if they had never existed. The Mary Celeste sailed on without them, for 10 days, 400 miles, toward a port she never reached. I am Inspector Morrow, and the file remains open. If the darkness suits you, stay, press subscribe. More cases, more questions, more nights with no clean answers.